There have been multiple explosions near a food distribution point opened by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation in the centre of Gaza Strip. It's after Israeli shots were fired near one of the aid points in the south on Wednesday. We're going to go to Tareq up Azzoum. He's joining us from Deir el-Balah in central Gaza. Tareq, what more do we know?
Well, Rob, what we do know so far is that since the early hours of this morning, civilians started to crowd in gathering areas and on all roads that are leading to the newly formed distribution point in the central areas of Gaza, run by Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has been the responsible body for distributing aid in Gaza over the past 4 days, backed full by the American administration and the Israeli side. We have heard just 30 minutes ago a huge explosion coming from the vicinity of Netzarim corridor, where civilians have been gathering there in order to get food parcels. Many of them managed, in fact, to get some food boxes and returned safe to their temporary shelters here in the central area, while others are still unable to get any food parcels because of the massive number of people. We are talking about thousands of people are right now located in Salahuddin Road, and they are waiting for permission to reach this area. But eyewitnesses confirmed that Israeli military tanks started to approach close to the crowds of people there and started to shoot at them, forcing hundreds to back to the central areas of Gaza without getting any kind of aid. So it's a very controversial manner by the Israeli military. At the same time, Israel says they are so keen to alleviate the current food crisis away from giving Hamas the opportunity to get aid. And when civilians started to move to the designated distribution points run by the American company, they started to shoot at them. Gaza's health ministry, in fact, reported that over the past 48 hours, 9 Palestinians were killed and over 60 others were wounded while they were trying to get aid from the designated distribution centers. This mechanism is completely failing to meet the wide-scale extensive demands of Gaza's population. The warnings made by UN agencies and other aid organizations were not only bureaucratic statements, they were emergency alarms, as without the full restoration of humanitarian corridors, the left of the blockades and the protection of aid workers and civilians alike, Gaza will continue to sink into further waves and waves of famine. And this has been the outcome of this restriction and the ongoing mechanism of aid distribution led by Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is merely and completely, by the way, triggering some sort of civil disorder in Gaza, as many reports also are coming from northern Gaza from our colleagues there, confirming that people started to move to the Netzarim corridor from the eastern end of Gaza City, and they have been shot by the Israeli military, and many of the aid has been looted by desperate families who have been completely unable to afford the minimal level of humanitarian basic necessities for their children.
Tareq, we're just looking at some of the pictures now that we've been getting in of the kind of explosion that has been happening. We've been seeing the clouds of smoke and dust that have been rising on the horizon. I appreciate, of course, that you're in Deir el-Balah outside the main hospital there. Is there any indication just how close that explosion happened to the distribution point and to the crowds of people who had been gathering?
It was very close. In fact, the explosion has rocked the entire vicinity of the Netzarim corridor, but families, we have been hearing from them that they are no longer fear of death because they are simply hungry. They say that we will go to the designated distribution points in order to get food supplies for our mothers and for our children in order to survive, because the famine rates in Gaza have been spiraling out of control because people believe that Israel has been choking the flow of aid into Gaza, and now they are not allowing for UN agencies to have a fair and transparent mechanism to distribute aid throughout the 400 distribution points that they have. And with the sufficient data and awareness about the humanitarian networks here in Gaza and the massive needs of the people on the ground, as they have used to do over the past decade. So apparently what's going on right now in Netzarim corridor and also in Mirage corridor corridor, which is at the southern end of Khan Yunis city, is a sign of a full collapse for the humanitarian response system in Gaza. Aid agencies have been crippled in order to operate in Gaza, and the repeated looting incidents also are making it quite difficult for aid to reach everyone on the ground. This endless cycle of desperation, in fact, has been triggered due to the Israeli systematic destruction of civilian infrastructure, and Israel right now is attacking people under some security concerns in order to push them away from these aid distribution centers, in a sign that Gaza is not either able to get enough amount of aid nor even to survive from the Israeli airstrikes in light of this ongoing escalation. We're expecting that a number of people have been wounded as emergency services started to partially get closer from the site of the attacks there, waiting for any sign that people might be wounded there in light of the very extensive and heavy Israeli presence in the area.
And that's key, isn't it? Because despite the fact that the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Organization, which, as you say, is backed by the US and Israel, and which has been roundly condemned by many aid groups, including the UN, has set up these distribution centers, nevertheless, the fact that people have to walk to get to them, predominantly towards the south. This is the first time we're talking about the aid center, which has been opened up towards the center of the Gaza Strip. There is nevertheless the risk that they are going to get caught up in the ongoing Israeli attacks, which have not stopped, of course, since the start of the war.
Yeah, that's completely right. There is no any kind of slowing for the Israeli attacks on Gaza. And in the past hour, the Israeli military targeted a group of civilians in Gaza City. 7 people were killed, according to medical reports. And in the central and southern parts of Gaza, we continue to get reports of people being wounded by the Israeli military. The Israeli, in fact, escalation on the ground is bringing very devastating humanitarian consequences. Entire families and generations being wiped out in a matter of seconds following a series of deadly airstrikes that took place since the early hours of this morning. The latest was on a series of residential houses in el-Balah refugee camp. As far as we know, 19 Palestinians were killed. They were from separate families, and people continue to report that no warnings were given ahead of the strike. This all happens in the backdrop of this unprecedented humanitarian crisis, which means and signals that people are not just only being killed without warning, but they were killed also while they were hungry and trying to get food as well.
Tareq, thank you very much indeed. That's Tareq Azzoum talking to us there from Deir el-Balah in this centre of Gaza. Just to bring you up to date, if you're just joining us, we have been bringing you live pictures of a large explosion which has happened very close to an aid distribution centre, which has just been opened by the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Organization, which is backed by the US and Israel. Thousands of people, as Tareq was explaining to us, have been gathering at that distribution point in the Netzarim corridor in order to try to get some of the very limited aid which has been allowed into Gaza over the last few days or so.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.